Hello, this is John Capity from John Capity Guitar Academy, your monthly guitar coach with the Guitar 90 Easy Learning System curriculum course that you are a part of. And today's training is from week number 1, and this one is Rhythm Training Basics. Part 1 might be listed as Part A in your course material, and then the Part B is the one where we're actually going to play the rhythms. Part A is about learning the rhythms today. So let's get right into it. We're going to do a screen share here and talk about rhythm. We're going to start learning the basics of rhythm. Okay, so of course you can print out in your course, you can print out the PDF or you can pull it up on your device to follow along, or you should be able to see this on the screen as well in my screen share here. I'll expand it out just a little bit here. Okay, so rhythm, it's the placement of time values on an arrangement of recurring sounds. There's a bunch of information at the top of this rhythm page that is more for your own personal knowledge. I'm only concerned with you starting to understand what the rhythm values are at the moment. Some of these things are a little bit more intense into standard music reading and so forth. You don't have to know them, but it is good to know them. So I've included that information on this paper for you, such as the time signature. That's this, what looks like a fraction here, this 4/4. These lines here make up a staff of music, which then we can put standard notation on. But what we also have here is we have a breakdown of a measure. Okay, that's this here, where it says measure here, this box before this line. And we've talked about that in guitar tablature too. These lines here, they separate each box or each measure of music. Okay. So inside this measure, then we have a certain number of beats that can fit inside that measure. So if you have some kind of a beat running in the background, how many of those clicks are going to fit inside the box. In the 4/4 time signature, what we have is we have 4 of these fit inside the box. Okay. So if we have that going on, also just a quick side note as I'm thinking about it here, you can access metronomes online by just typing into a Google search, metronome online. Do I have that spelling there for you? METRONOME, METRONOME, metronome. You can pull up metronome online and get a bunch of free metronomes. My Google page even had one right on the page. I didn't even have to go to a website or anything to access a metronome. So, or you can buy a metronome. That's going to be pretty important because you need something to keep time. You can get a drum machine. You can get a metronome. You can get an app on your iPhone or Android phone that has a metronome on it to keep time. Or you can just go to the store, just like the old days where we actually used to go buy one that keeps time. They have digital ones and so forth. They range all kinds of prices, $20 to $40 or so, give or take. But you can get them free online to use on Google, and you can get an app. An app sometimes, we're just talking $1, $2, $5, something like that. So that's a lot cheaper way to go, is to use a device for it, or tablet or so forth. Okay, but we do need something to keep time, and just so you can hear it again, I was snapping to indicate time, but I will also, if I use the right mouse here, on my desktop, my larger desktop behind here, I'm going to play the metronome so you can hear a click in the background. Right now this is set for 72 beats per minute. That's what a metronome does. It keeps track of beats per minute. So if you had 60 beats per minute, that would be 60 beats or 60 clicks inside of 1 minute of time. So this is what it sounds as 72 BPM. And hopefully the microphone is picking that up. You should hear a little click in the background. Okay, so that's all we're looking for. And a lot of times with the apps and so forth and the different things on the computer, you can have different sounds. You can have a voice counting off for you, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You can have like a snapping in the background. So whatever kind of sound helps your ear to keep track better. For instance, with a digital metronome, when I have a high pitched kind of sound, it actually interferes with me keeping time. That does not work well for me. More of this sound that I just played for you in the background tends to be a better sound for me and my ears, but a lot of people like the higher sounds better. So you just want to play around with that a little bit. But the important thing is that we are keeping time inside a measure. And the time that we're going to keep is 4 beats per measure for now. So it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Okay, so every time you get to that number 4 and say the number 4 or hear the 4th click, then we're starting over and repeating in the new measure. Okay, so how are we going to break down those? Now that we know 4 beats have to fit in the measure, and again, this is just one type of time signature, 4/4, which happens to be the most common. The second one I would say is 3/4, possibly followed by 6/8, are some of the most common time signatures, but we're going to stay with 4/4 for now. That means that 4 beats will be in the measure. Okay, so then we have some notes as we're following along together here on the paper. We have some notes at the bottom here, and we have what looks like a circle that is empty, that is not colored in. It has no lines or no stems attached to it, and hopefully you can see my little mouse here as I'm highlighting it. This is a whole note, which is equal to 4 beats. So a circle with nothing attached to it and not colored in, completely empty, is going to fill up the whole measure. As you can see in the example right above it, there is a circle with nothing, no lines attached to it, just an empty circle, and it fills up the entire measure. There's nothing after it. So that means that when we see that, we're going to play that, and we're going to count to 4 and hold that out. Similar to this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're just playing a note and holding it out for a count to 4. Okay, and then we get to the new measure. So let's talk about what else is in there. So when we come over here into the second measure, then it changes. We again have a circle that is empty, but now we have a stem or a line, okay, a stem, it's called, attached to that circle. And I want you to think of that stem or that line, and we're looking at this half note right here, which is right in your music above in that second measure there, okay? That stem, we want to look at it as dividing the whole note, the circle above it, in half. Okay, so I know it doesn't go down the middle, but just view that stem with an empty circle as dividing a whole note, which is 4 beats, in half. And we now call this a half note, and it's 2 beats. So now to fill up a whole measure, we would need 2 of those inside the measure. So we would have to play 2 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We would need 2 of them to make up an entire 4 beats of one measure. Going a step further, if we look to our right top inside the blue box here, we then have a quarter note, and you'll notice it looks pretty much the same as a half note. Okay, it's a stem, it's a circle. The only difference being the circle is colored in. Okay, so on the left side, we had a circle that was not colored in. It was empty with a stem on it, and that equaled a half note or 2 beats. Above that, we had a circle that was empty with no stems attached to it, and that was equal to 4 beats. And then up at the top right, we have a circle with a stem, but this time it's colored in, and it's now it's called a quarter note, and that is equal to 1 beat of time. Okay, so if it's 1 beat or a quarter note, then we would need 4 of them to fit inside one measure. You can see examples in the music right above here In measure 2, we had the half note that we just discussed, which is an empty circle with a stem. And then now we have a quarter note, which is a circle filled in with a stem. And there's 2 of those in the measure. Quarter notes sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You pick every time there's a beat in the music. Okay? And the last one, which we're not going to get to in the next lesson today, we'll just touch on it. It'll be in Rhythm Training Basics Part 2, not Part 1. But we'll go ahead and touch on it since it's on the paper here. This is a circle filled in with a stem. And then there's another circle filled in with a stem next to it. And they're attached together. Now, I should have prefaced that this is if there are multiple eighth notes in the music. This is what's called an eighth note. There are 2 ways that you will see these eighth notes. I should have started with that. I apologize. And you can look right below. If you look right below here in this blue circle, you will see a circle with a stem and what looks like a little flag hanging off of it. If you see one of these guys called an eighth note, which is worth half of 1 beat, then if it's solo, if it's all by itself, you're going to see it with a little flag. If there are 2 next to each other, then they will be formed together with a bracket attaching them together. So if we have multiples of 2, each grouping of 2 is going to have that bracket on it. Okay? So we have, again, we're just looking at the blue box here, we have a whole note, which is an empty circle with no stems. We have a half note, which is an empty circle with a stem. We have, and a half note is worth 2 beats. The whole note is worth 4 beats, the full measure, the full pie, the full pizza. A half note, remember that stem divides the pie in half, the pizza in half, that equals 2 beats. Then we have the circle that's colored in with the stem on it, which is a quarter note or 1 beat or 1 slice of a pie. Okay. And then we have an eighth note, which divides that quarter note in half. So the eighth note is half of 1 beat. So what does an eighth note sound like? And I'll also mention that when you're picking eighth notes, this is the first time we introduce alternate picking. So the first one will be down, and the next one will be up, and then be down, and then be up. Okay, we'll stop screen share for a minute, give you a little closer view on that. On the picking, hopefully the microphone's not in the way here. Picking is down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... Those are eighth notes. There's going to be 8 of them in the measure. We need 8 of them to fill up 4 complete beats. With quarter notes, you need 4 of them to fill up the 4 beats inside the measure. With a half note, you need 2 of them to fill up the 4 beats in a measure. And with a whole note, you just need 1 of them to fill up the 4 beats within a measure. Okay, so that's all we're going to discuss right now for Rhythm Training Basics Part 1. Again, this is Part A, where we do the breakdown of the actual notes, what they look like, what they look inside of music, what they look like inside of music on a staff, and so forth. And now we're going to go to Rhythm Training Basics Part B, Part 1B here, and that is where we actually play. We look at some music, and we're going to actually play it with a metronome. Okay, and you also have an MP3 inside the course. So there's the PDF, that's the actual music that we're going to play. We're going to follow the rhythms. We're going to mix it up a bunch on the paper, give you some practice on, playing whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, not eighth notes in this first one, just whole, half, and quarter. And we're going to mix them up a bunch so you get some good exercise on playing those and counting the timing. I want you to do this with a metronome. Okay, so I will see you in Part B. Again, this is John Capity, John Capity Guitar Academy, your monthly guitar coach. And this was Rhythm Training Basics Part 1A. We'll see you in the next video.